When you hear the word hypnosis, what comes to mind? Is it a swinging pocket watch? A stage performer making people cluck like chickens? Well, the real story is so much more fascinating. It's a journey from the wild theatrical salons of 18th century Paris all the way to modern operating rooms. Today, we're going to dive into that surprising and often misunderstood history.
Right from the very beginning, the story of hypnosis starts with a fundamental mistake, and it's right there in the name. Hypnosis comes from the Greek word hypnos, which means sleep. And that single idea, that one misconception, has shadowed the practice for centuries, because, as we're about to see, hypnosis is really anything but sleep.
So let's just clear this up right now. The myth is that you're unconscious, you've lost control, you're basically asleep. The reality? It's a state of hyper-attentive focus. Your brainwaves look totally different than when you're sleeping. You can talk, you can move, and you are absolutely aware of what's going on. It's not about losing consciousness, it's about powerfully focusing it.
To really get to the roots of modern hypnosis, we have to meet its founder. And he was, well, quite a character. A flamboyant and theatrical doctor named Franz Anton Mesmer, and his wild theory of animal magnetism.
Mesmer was a Viennese doctor who had this big idea that the entire universe was filled with this invisible magnetic fluid. He claimed that sickness was just a blockage of this fluid in the body. And who could fix it? A magnetizer, like him, of course, who could channel this fluid and restore a person's health. And you know what? High society in Vienna and Paris absolutely ate it up.
And his methods were pure spectacle. I mean, just picture this. A group of patients sitting around this big tub of magnetized water, holding on to iron rods. Then, Mesmer himself makes his grand entrance, usually wearing a fancy lilac silk coat, and he starts using his hands or a wand to channel the fluid. This would often lead to what he called a crisis. People would have convulsions or faint, and that was supposedly the moment of healing.
Well, as you can imagine, the scientific establishment got pretty skeptical pretty fast. In 1778, a commission from the French Academy of Sciences investigated and came back with a pretty damning verdict. They said the effects weren't from some mystical fluid, but from the power of imagination and suggestion. Mesmer was basically laughed out of town, but he had accidentally stumbled upon something huge. The idea that the mind itself could be a powerful healing tool.
So after Mesmer, the whole practice began this long, slow crawl away from mysticism and towards medicine. This was really the birth of a new science.
And when I say long and slow, I mean it. It took over a century from the time the word hypnotism was even invented in 1841 to when it was finally officially accepted by the British and American medical associations in the 1950s.
But during that time, some incredible proof started to pile up. One of the most powerful examples came from a Scottish surgeon working in India, Dr. James Esdale. In just 6 years, get this, he performed over 2,000 major surgeries, we're talking amputations, on patients who felt zero pain. And the only anesthetic he used was hypnosis. That's just an undeniable demonstration of its power.
The person who really started to shift things scientifically was another Scottish surgeon, James Braid. He's the one who coined the term hypnotism, and he completely threw out the whole magnetic fluid idea. He suggested a physiological reason for it, thinking that a fixed gaze could create a unique state in the nervous system. With that, he really started dragging the practice out of the world of magic and into medicine.
Okay, so now we're in the late 19th century, and the new field of psychology is emerging. Hypnosis looked like it could be a master key to the mind, but it also became a major battleground for some competing theories.
Over in France, you had these two major schools of thought just duking it out. You had the Nancy school, which said hypnosis was totally normal, just a psychological state based on suggestion that pretty much anyone could experience. But then you had the rival Salpêtrière school, led by the very famous Jean-Martin Charcot, who argued it was a symptom of a neurological disorder called hysteria. In the end, Charcot's view lost out, but that whole debate really set the stage for how psychology would study the mind for years to come.
And this is where a very familiar name enters the story, Sigmund Freud. He actually used hypnosis early in his career to try and access repressed memories, but he found the results were inconsistent, so he eventually ditched it for his famous talking cure, which became psychoanalysis. Because Freud became such a giant in the field, his decision was a huge setback that pushed hypnosis to the fringes for decades.
But in the 20th century, one man would come along and almost single-handedly revive the entire field and completely reshape it for the modern world.
And that man was Dr. Milton H. Erickson. He was a psychiatrist who came up with a totally new approach.
Instead of these formal, bossy commands, Erickson used conversational, indirect language, even metaphors and stories. He tailored his entire technique to each individual patient. He turned hypnosis into a flexible, elegant, and really powerful therapeutic tool.
In fact, Erickson's techniques were so revolutionary that they were studied and modeled by two men, Richard Bandler and John Grinder, to create a whole new field you might have heard of, neuro-linguistic programming, or NLP. They basically decoded his methods into something they called the Milton model, which showed how you could achieve the benefits of a trance state just through natural conversation.
And that brings us right into the modern era, where the way people think about hypnosis and how it's used has gone through this huge, dramatic transformation.
For most of the 20th century, hypnosis was seen as the last resort, right? It was the thing you tried when literally everything else had failed. So the question for the modern era became, could it ever be a first choice?
The answer was a resounding yes. Starting in the 1990s, hypnosis came roaring back. It became a super popular and effective primary tool for tackling common things like quitting smoking, managing weight, and reducing stress. All these issues where the power of your own mind is really the key to success.
Today, its applications are just incredibly diverse. It's used in dentistry for pain control, by police to help witnesses remember details, in therapy to treat deep phobias and trauma, and even by professional athletes to get a mental edge. From the operating room to the Olympic field, hypnosis has finally found its place as a legitimate, respected tool.
This entire history, by the way, was compiled from the work of Daniel Olson. It really shows a practice that journeyed from being all about mystical fluids to becoming a validated medical tool. It finally emerged from centuries of being misunderstood. And its story is a testament not to magic, but to the focused and still largely untapped power of the human mind.